Welcome to the Sooners 360 Recruiting Podcast, a podcast for OU recruiting fans by Sooners 360. Each week we catch you up on the latest in OU recruiting news and provide opinions and evaluations on all things OU football recruiting. I'm Chris Mason, lead recruiting analyst for Sooners 360. This podcast is now sponsored by Sooners 360 on Patreon. To support this podcast, please go to patreon.com/Sooners360817 and click subscribe. It's only $2 a month. Then there's also a free trial option, and that's where I'm posting all of my regular recruiting content. The link will also be in the show notes. Also, this podcast is now part of the Believe podcast family. Every team, every topic, everywhere. I got a new hardware setup right now. So let me just modify something. Let me just move something over to make things a little more user-friendly for myself. Sorry about that. And just a quick reminder for everyone that I'm appearing on the Horns Down podcast and the Hall of Fame podcast with Jason Watkins, and the Horns Down podcast with Chris with a K. On Thursday nights, we do a live stream discussing OU season, football recruiting for OU, and basically just the program in general. So if you want to be notified about those, please like and subscribe to the Sooners 360 YouTube channel. Just go to youtube.com, type in the search box, Sooners 360, and you'll be notified whenever I do those live streams. Also, you could just go to the channel, Sooners 360, and click the live tab, and you can watch replays of the discussions and arguments that Chris and Jason and I have about all things OU football. So we're back. Sorry we've been gone for a little bit. Most of July, I was out of town. I went back to England for about 10 days, and then I came back, and nothing was really going on with recruiting. And I would have posted an update last weekend, but my Google Fiber was down all weekend. So I'm now temporarily back up. Still need to get a couple of things squared away, but I've had a couple of technical issues lately. So we're back, and I probably would have been back last night, but things didn't go quite right OU's way. So things went OU's way today. So we're back. And this is going to be episode 135 with the title, We're Back, Huge Commitment. So let's just jump to the recruiting news. So we always talk about verbal commitment news first, and we have two OU verbal commitments to talk about. Good news for the Sooners today from the Pat McAfee show. I was dreaded watching it live, but I did with all the late beats OU has suffered in the last 90 days, including a terrible late beat 24 hours before. But Jake didn't fake around, didn't do any nonsense, and just picked OU. So good for, great pickup for the Sooners. Nice, coverage on the McAfee show, who everybody watches. Who has a huge viewership. They were raving about Jake Krull. They had A.J. Hawk, the former linebacker from Ohio State, came on and was raving about his highlights, about his pass rush moves. There's one highlight where he dips right under the offensive tackle and blows up a quarterback. So they were raving about that. So it was kind of a good feel-good moment for the Sooners and for Sooner fans who've had we've had some tough beats, late beats, led for folks, silent verbals to OU that have, at the 11th hour at an announcement, have gone the opposite direction. Jacob Eberhardt, Tavian Branch, Davian Gross, who we'll get into in a minute. So for OU, who have been recruiting Jake Krull for just basically forever, OU's been, he's been in Norman 7 times, I think, at this point, maybe a little more than that. He's just been a presence and been part of the OU class, been projected to be part of the OU class, since most folks started doing projections this year. They got the visit schedule set up the way they wanted. They got the last shot. And again, the date move up. He was talking about a September-October decision and gave an updated interview to, I believe it was Steve Wiltfong or Chad Simmons, where he indicated that he wanted to see OU play. That's what he was waiting on. So when he pushed up his commitment to August 12th, there was some concerns from OU fans that he was going to go ahead and choose Texas because Texas didn't have to show him anything on the field, because Texas has obviously had their two best seasons really since Colt McCoy and Vince Young were rattling around Austin. So the win, so OU to pull this win, it's big. OU beat Texas, Ole Miss, and at some point I think UF was floating around. I was on a live stream episode of Jason Watkins' Hall of Fame podcast on Saturday night, audio only. There's a Florida guy on there who goes by the handle The Professor, and he was saying he thought Jake Cruel would just sign with Florida. So that doesn't appear to be the case right now, at least. We'll see how things go for both the Florida season and the OU season. But, Cruel is a top 50 guy overall. He's top 30 on ESPN. He's basically a 5-star over on ESPN's recruiting rankings, which aren't the best or always updated the most, but that's where his top ranking is. And in many ways, if Bo Bentley is the gem on the offensive side of the ball, Jake Cruel is the gem on the defensive side of the ball. He is a pass rush specialist. He routinely, the last 2 years, has been dominating top 100 ranked offensive tackles at combines and camps. Everyone remembers when he basically embarrassed Felix Ojo on a couple of back-to-back plays and just made him look silly. He's done that to just about everybody. I think the only two guys I recall giving him super problems were David Sanders last year, the offensive tackle that went to Tennessee, the only guy really in argument with Michael Fasusi over the number one offensive tackle for the 2025 class. So Sanders had a year on him. And then Mark, I had Nacho, who I think is going to Oregon. I think I had that right. His size and bulk at 6'5", 350, 6'6", 350, with his mobility, which is why Mark is probably the number one offensive tackle in this class. It's him or Kenyon Pepe going to, or the guy from Missouri who was looking at OU on point, Jackson. His name escaped. I know I can see him right in front of you, but I'm not pulling up the name. It's Ohancho Kenny Pepe from IMG, who's going to USC, and then the guy from Cantwell? Yes, Jackson Cantwell, who's going to Miami. Those are the three best tackles, and he's gone up against those guys in various camp settings. Went head to head with Pepe, won and lost a couple of clips that I saw floating around the internet. I don't think he's ever gone against Cantwell. Hancho gave him a little problem, just because I think it's just because he's so big. So for the most part, Jake Cruel, he's listed, all over the place, but I'm going to go with, let's just call him 6'3", 235. He probably will enroll early based upon how fundamentally sound he is and how well he's been developed and coached and how much he's put into it. He has an idea about pass rushing. He's very good off the line. He has a great spin move. It's easy to see Jake Cruel enrolling early in Norman, putting 10, 15 pounds on to put him in the 240 to 245 range, and contributing on the Sooners' defensive end rotation as perhaps a situational third down pass rusher his true freshman year. That's an entirely possible scenario right now. You could have 2026 defensive, third and long, game on the line, pass rushing, you could have Danny Okoye with Jake Krull on the other side. That's a completely plausible scenario, presuming Krull follows through and signs with the Sooners. So it's a big addition for OU. Again, I really like the defensive end class. Miguel Chavis, we're hearing lots of great things about his current room in Norman, but I think this is right now you'd have to say he has the best position group in the recruiting class. I think it's defensive end now with the addition of Jake Krull. Then it's probably, I would say, Bo Bentley at quarterback, knowing that OU only needs one quarterback and hit the guy they really wanted, who's a borderline top, I think he will end up top 50, borderline 5-star. And then you have Jojon Finley with the two tight ends, the tight end class of Ryder Mix and Tyler Ruxer. I think that's a really quality group right there. So, but Chavis is, I think, taking the title right now, unless something really changes with the position groups. He's got Jake Krull, who's a top 100, top 50 player. Daniel Norman is probably going to be somewhere in the top 150, top 200 by the time things ever all settled out. He was there on 3 before they, merged with Rivals. And then I think Mr. Nelson from Arkansas is going to end up, if he has a good season, and remember, he's playing on the same defense as Ja'Cory Smith. So that's going to be two OU players on the same defense. I think there's a good chance that Nelson moves into a sort of a low 4-star territory. And both Norman and Nelson have high upsides. They can take a little time to develop, but they have fantastic upsides. And then Krull, I think, hits campus and contributes. And he's got kind of if you're looking for different comps, I heard somebody throw out the name TJ Watt. And I'm not sure Krull's that long, but that doesn't sound like the world's worst comparison to me in terms of just the relentless pass rush that he has and the pursuit. So big commitment for 2026. Moved OU back into the top 25 on the Rivals rankings in terms of team rankings. And OU's only got 16 commits, and the majority of the schools ahead of them are probably in the 20 range. So OU could easily move up, and the rankings are based on Rivals on your top 20 kids. So OU's got 4 spots to fill to move up into the top 20 if they can get the right kids verbaled or get some commitments down the road coming up. So the other commitment that happened last week was the first commitment for 2027, Luke Wilson, offensive tackle from South Lake Carroll, 6'6", 275, 270. Could be a little bigger than that. He plays, I believe, left tackle for South Lake Carroll. He looks really good. His film is excellent for a sophomore. His teammate, Tristan Dare, just verbaled to Michigan. So he plays on a very talented South Lake Carroll team with 2 offensive linemen, one going to OU, one going to Michigan. And we know Sharon Moore knows offensive line, and we know Bill Biedenbaugh knows offensive line. He's not really ranked or evaluated correctly right now, but I think he's a 4-star, top 300 type player. Could be a little higher, depending upon how his junior year goes, but he's exactly the development kind of prospect that you want to add to the offensive tackle mix in Norman. And I think he's a true example of how the new process is going to work for the Sooners, or how they'd like it to work. So Wilson came to the OU summer camp where Jim Nagy and his team were able to get all the measurables and metrics that they want, right? Length, height, wingspan, arm length, hand size, shuttle, 10-yard split, 5-yard split, just all the data points that Nagy has that tell him where a prospect falls in with the measurables that he wants to have an offensive tackle based upon all the offensive tackles he's gotten drafted through the Senior Bowl over the last 10 years. So he knows sort of what the ranges are and what he wants. And Wilson checked all those boxes. And then Wilson went out and had a fantastic camp session with Bill Beanbaugh. So Bill has an idea of how hard he works. Is he coachable? And does he want to be coached by Bill? So all those things checked, all those boxes checked, and that's how the process works. So they offered him, according to Luke Wilson, in an interview I saw with, I believe, OU Insider Rivals. Now we have two OU rival sites. It's a little weird. He talked about how that they took him into a room and Bill, Brent, and Jim Nagy, and I think Lake Dawson all offered him and made sure that he knew that, he had a new Sooner offer. And I think, he's just pulling the trigger because OU's got quite a few offensive linemen in the mix. When he was at that camp, he saw 4 or 5 guys get offers. So, OU's got a good list of offensive linemen that they're chasing for 2027. So I think Luke Wilson smartly grabbed a spot. If I had to guess, Luke is probably a right tackle. But his developments, he could play left tackle. His film is really good. And like I said, he's got a big frame, long wingspan, and he's athletic. So a lot of places this can go in terms of his O-line development. All right, that's all the positive news I have. Let's get to the bad news. Davion Gross chose University of Florida. Was it a last-minute money grab based upon a bigger UF offer? That kind of sounds like what's going on. And it kind of sounds like the Gross process where we kept expecting something to happen was maybe their way and their agent's way of trying to make sure they got the biggest offer they can. That's certainly within their rights. That's certainly what they're capable of doing. And it certainly looks like we're getting a trend line that Nagy is not going to overspend for wide receivers. When portal, guys with 1,000-yard receiving seasons are in the portal left and right, freely available. You have a guy like Giovanni Gibson, who, before he got hurt was the talk of spring, and it looked old, and he's now back running. So hopefully he can come. He can make a big impact this year. We'll see. But guys like Gibson, Burks, even Keontae Lewis, with his 800 yards receiving, it's just the portal is always full of wide receivers, and there's a lot of guys who've had a lot of production. So maybe that's where OU is going to focus on. OU will set a limit on what they're going to spend at wide receiver. And if kids take that, great. If not, then they'll look elsewhere. Where does this leave OU? OU probably needs 2 wide receivers in the class. Daniel Odom has indicated he's shutting down his recruiting, sticking with OU. Really positive sign there. And OU has a new name that they offered, which we'll get to. And there's guys that OU is probably still talking to, and guys committed to programs where once the season starts, or maybe those wide receivers see that OU's passing game's back to what it used to be, and maybe the school they're committed to, their coach is not really doing very well, or their passing game is not what they were promised. Maybe we'll see some changes there. I'm not really sure. On the other end of it, also Elijah Golden chose Notre Dame. We all knew that was happening. It would have been nice to pick him up and add him to the D-line class, but just like Jake Kroll's known the OU coaches longer than UF's or Ole Miss or Texas, Golden's been connected to Notre Dame for a while. When the defensive end from Alabama chose Oregon instead of Notre Dame, I think that closed the door. Notre Dame then needed to focus on Golden. I think if they'd gotten him, I think his name is Jones, I think that might have been okay. That's our D-line class done. I know you maybe could have swept in and got Golden, but with that loss, Notre Dame needed to double back and get another body for their defensive line. And Golden can be kind of a big defensive end, which might work better for the Notre Dame scheme. For OU, he was probably a 3-tech. So decisions coming scheduled. We're down to 1. We only have 1 guy from all the summer visitors that has not verbal to OU or verbal elsewhere. I'm pretty sure that's the case. Brett College, who visited for the OU spring game, chose USC a couple of weeks ago. I didn't think he was choosing OU. We were a hat on the table, but we weren't really the hat. Weren't really a choice there. It is T-Ron Richardson, the defensive tackle from Virginia. He's 6'4", 6'5", 280, depending upon what service you believe and who's evaluated him most recently. I don't think we have a solid number from a camp or anything like that to fall back on. He's announcing August 26th, and could be OU, could be Virginia Tech. That's probably where things are. Will Vatek do what UF did or Illinois did or Rutgers and make a big play at the end to try and lock him down? I don't know. Seems like OU is the favorite, but we got 2 weeks of this to play out. And it's D-line. Anybody could pop up and decide they need him or make an offer, and he could push things off. So we'll just see what's going on. We're in a dead period right now, so no one can actually go visit him. He can't visit another campus. So if he sticks with this decision time frame, I would say it's a 50-50 flip between OU and Vatek. Distance versus program prestige. So that's it for the recruiting, the raw recruiting news, the big recruiting news that's out there. So let's get to there's been quite a bit of action on this lately. So I'm going to talk about the Michigan visitors that are anticipated being on campus. And it's mostly 2027 kids because, like I said, OU is not. They're 2026 kids. We'll get to the new offers they made. There's just not that much traffic out there. That could change between now and second week in September. But right now, that's kind of where we are. So it looks like Peyton Houston will be on campus. That's huge because the 2027 quarterback class is dropping left and right, both in verbal commitments and crystal balls across the country. Elijah Heaven to Florida. Michigan just got a guy. His name's Borke, I think. Arizona State just got a crystal ball for a commitment. SMU just got a commitment from the other guy from Louisiana. So there's lots of guys dropping in terms of where they're finding their different spots. So, and various sites think USC's in the lead for Houston. I'm not sure I really buy that, but we'll see. So if OU can get Houston on campus, John Mateer can throw the ball around. OU's wide receivers can be healthy and make some plays. And OU can look good against Michigan. That would help greatly. And maybe locking up Houston and getting a commitment from him and getting back-to-back quarterbacks that Arbuckle wants. It's been reported by OU insider Parker Thune a couple of weeks ago, mentioned that he thinks it's currently scheduled for Cooper Hackett to be on campus. Again, that would be good. It's easier for him to come to Norman than it is for him to go to Lubbock from Fort Gibson. So it'd be nice to get Cooper Hackett back for a couple of OU home games if possible. Jake Krull was supposed to be coming to the Michigan game. I presume that's still going to be the case. Before, that was a big deal when you thought you were still fighting for his signature. Now it's just really nice that he's coming and we'll be there and we'll be around the other 2026 verbal commitments that are coming into town. Then we have Cameron Wagner, a big offensive tackle from Illinois, top 200 player. This is from an article that got published from 247. Relatively new name. He's coming on his own dime, so that's a good sign. Then another relatively new name, Luke Starshevik. He's from North Dakota. He's a big defensive end, defensive tackle. 6'5", 250, maybe a little bigger. He's a top 200 guy. He looks good on film. He's got a big frame. I wonder if he might move inside and play 3-tech. I think that's a possibility. Again, he's visiting OU on his own dime, which is nothing but a good sign. And then some more names that have been floating around out there. Andrew Beard, on a couple of Twitter updates has been floating around. It's confirmed he's going to be back for the Michigan game. He's a running back from Georgia, 5'9", 190, top 200 player in the nation. And he's been at OU several times, seems to be pretty connected with DeMarco Murray. I could see OU maybe signing 2 running backs in 2027 if the right guys fit. Then we have Darius Johnson, the top 100 cornerback from California. He's the brother of verbal commit Derek Johnson. So Derek will be on campus too. So OU has a nice chance to impress Darius Johnson, hopefully with that unofficial visit. Because obviously 2027 kids can't take official visits until next April. And then he's mentioned in a couple interviews, Eli Johnson, a really talented safety from the San Antonio area. He's 6'3", 200 pounds, top 200, 4-star. He's kind of an elite-looking guy on film. He's coming up. And then there's no report out there, but I bet that 4-star cornerback Trenton Blaylock will also be there to watch his brother Torrey. I imagine Trent is going to be on campus for a number of OU home games, if I had to guess. So that's the Michigan list right now. It'll probably increase. There'll probably be more names added. It's already pretty good, but I think a lot more in-state kids who have OU offers will probably get added between now and kick. So it could be, OU gets off to a strong, big start against Illinois State. It's going to be a primetime game of the week. College game day should be there. I think that'll be the first game day after Lee Corso retires, if I have that right. I don't think there's a game day for week 0, but I think I'm pretty sure game day is going to Texas, Ohio State, and that'll be the last mascot thing for Lee Corso. Next week, I think game day should be coming to Norman, whatever announcing team that is, because Fowler's doing tennis based upon everything that's been, everything that's been put out there. That's what Gabe Eichert indicated on their podcast. But I imagine we'll continue talking about this list and maybe adding more names. And you might see some bigger names and some other names added because, like I said, it's the game of the weekend and it's a Saturday night. So Dallas area kids and in-state kids, why not go see OU play Michigan? You get a free ticket, unofficial version of wine and dine. So we'll see what happens there. So OU has made 3 new offers for 2026. So some of this information may be a little bit of a repeat, but we'll just go over it again because it's been a month. So the first one is Braden Allen, the wide receiver from Louisiana. He's a 3-star. He's about 6'1", 180 pounds. He's a Tulane verbal. He had 1,100 yards receiving as a junior, and he has fantastic looking film. And he's a 3-star. He looks better than that. Ole Miss and Colorado, according to reports, are looking at him. Louisiana is just full of undeveloped talent and talent that sometimes flies on the radar. Justin Jefferson being a 5.2 Rivals, almost a 2-star, being the prime example of how someone can fly under the radar. I wouldn't be surprised if he visits for either Michigan or maybe OU makes a move with him before the Michigan game. OU has a wide receiver spot, and he would be a nice addition. The other offer I really like is that they offered a Northwestern commit and Florida linebacker Jacob Curry. He's about 6'2", 6'3", 210. His best ranking is a high 3-star on Rivals. The other services haven't evaluated him. I know the 3-star stuff is driving fans a little bit crazy, but, Jim Nagy told you he's not interested in stars. He said it 3 or 4 times now, so just get used to it, okay? It's not changing as long as he's around. The film is really good. He's extremely physical. He's got a lanky frame, long wingspan. There's probably a 6'2", 225, 230 linebacker in his future. He's very fast. He's indicating a sub 4.5 40 time. He's got the measurables for the every down linebacker that everybody wants right now. So we'll see what OU does there. I'd like to think they could get him onto campus for an early visit and maybe make a flip. That'd give you 3 linebackers in the class. That would be good, because I think OU just needs more linebacker depth. That's the one position where they're a little behind. OU also re-offered USC offensive tackle commit Vlad Konov. He's 6'7", 270, 280 from California. Rivals has him as number 101 in the nation. He's originally from Belarus. I'm not sure why OU re-offered him in such a public social media fashion, but it appears Nagy staff member Stacy Ford, formerly of UCLA, made the re-offer or pushed it or was the one who contacted him. I think he probably has a prior relationship with Vlad from when he was at UCLA and recruiting him. I think it was a UCLA-USC battle. When you watch the film of Vlad doing backflips off like a diving board and doing them on, handstands on the beach, you get an idea of his overall athleticism. He's got super measurables. He's just very raw and needs development time. That, to me, seems like someone that Bill could work with. And he would be a left tackle. He could also probably be a right tackle down the line, but he's got the athleticism to be a development left tackle for the Sooners. Should they push, they should be able to get him on campus. I'd expect a couple more 2026 offers to go out by the time the Michigan game arrives. Or by Auburn. At the very least, by the time OU plays Texas, I expect several more offers or several more guys OU's pushing to flip. We just got an image on Twitter from Stacy Ford, the OU part of Nagy's staff, and he was showing some chef flipping stuff in a pan. So maybe we're gonna have another commitment come down the pike here. Who knows? Just a quick recap of some recent 2027 offers. OU offered LaRon Baker, 5'10", 180-pound wide receiver from Missouri. He had a laser 4.45 camp time and had a good camp season. So he's getting lots of offers, OU being the most recent one. OU offered from Mobile, Alabama, the combination of 2 guys, Ellis McGaskin, who's a linebacker, top 200. And then Jalen Scott, a safety, who's top 100 on 247. OU's, trying to get players from SEC territory. We'll see if they can make that work. Then OU offered Antoine Higgins, a big linebacker, possibly an edge rusher from Ohio. OU tried that last year. This cycle didn't make it work. But Higgins is a big, physical, athletic linebacker. He could be a big Mike easily. He's 6'3", 225. Again, he could grow into a defensive end for the OU scheme as well. I'm not sure OU can pull him away from the Buckeyes, but they have pulled guys from Ohio before. See Reggie Powers and Brian Asamoah. Then OU offered from New Mexico, and I'm not sure the last time OU offered a player from New Mexico. I think it might be Landry Jones, but I'll have to double check. There might be some player in between. They offered Colton McKibben. He's 6'3", 225 from New Mexico. He's a top 200 on 247. He's from New Mexico, which is not usually a talent-rich state. But the film backs up the offer. He's flying around. He's physical. He would be a big Mike linebacker in the class. OU's got a lot of linebacker offers. Nate Dreiling, obviously, in his second year, making sure that he's poised for a big linebacker class. Again, in 2027, he's got in-state targets. He's got Texas targets, and he's got some national targets down. So really a good film, good offer. We'll see how things shake out with with some of these 2027 kids. And then last but not least, Todd Bates offered Ben Jarvis Shoemaker from Mississippi. He's 6'3", 285. He's top 50 on Rivals. He's a big defensive tackle, 3-tech. Probably can play at over 300. Just what OU's looking for. Todd Bates hasn't really won an SEC defensive tackle battle yet. That's not been from the state of Florida. Hasn't pulled anybody from Alabama, Georgia, or Mississippi, or South Carolina, or Tennessee, or Louisiana, which is probably the hardest pull. So Todd Bates is going back here, and let's hope you can get a visit, and this could be perhaps a battle OU can win. So that's the big recap of everything that's been happening since I've been gone. I appreciate you guys for listening to the podcast, and we'll be back up and running, and you'll be getting recruiting pods on a weekly basis as news comes and goes. So thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your audio platform of choice, and don't forget to leave a rating. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel so that you'll be notified when I upload videos. And once again, please visit patreon.com/Sooners360817 to subscribe for more recruiting content on Sooners 360 on Patreon. That Patreon site keeps this podcast free, keeps this podcast going. So please consider going to the site, giving us a trial, and giving us a shot. We'll be back next week with more recruiting news and the season, and this Saturday is the last Saturday without college football. So we're 11 days away from Farmageddon in Dublin, sponsored by Guinness. And then the next week, OU plays during the Labor Day weekend. So football is back. It's exciting. Lots of stuff going on. And recruiting is about to pick up and get going again. So thanks everyone. And look for a podcast next week.